So, Ted, I believe we have a guest that you know on. Tell us a little bit about Rob.
We now welcome Rob Kowal to the show. Rob is the sports director of 1240 AM WGBB and also hosts a show called Sports Talk 1240. And he also has a great documentary about his father's softball team that you most definitely would want to hear about. I'm sure you're going to want to watch it after. So, Rob, thanks for being on.
Hey, Ted, thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem. I guess, and they're already calling me, Rob. You know, you show up and the phone starts ringing. So tell me this. Before we get into the documentary, Beaver Doc, and Sports Talk 1240, I got to ask you a local homer question. Now, I believe you're a Yankees fan. I'm a Mets fan, but it's okay. We still like you. Has Matt Harvey turned it around, or at least enough to be the third best starter on the Mets?
Well, I think people get carried away. A couple of bad games. The media scrutiny now is so intense. If a guy has a bad start, everything seems to get blown out of proportion. I think the players and the coaches at the major league level tend to panic a little bit less than we as fans do. So there's no questioning Matt Harvey's talent as a pitcher. Of course, he's had a rough start here to begin the season, but I don't think there's really much to be concerned about. I think all the indicators that are there is his fastball has gone back up to where it usually is. I think it may be more than anything else. It might have been a mental thing with him. Who knows? But as far as if I were a Mets fan, I wouldn't be too worried about it. In terms of where he ranks in the pitching order for the Mets, I mean, they have so many great starters. I don't know that it matters so much. Right now, Syndergaard clearly seems to be the ace of the staff, but a few months down the road, he could struggle, and Harvey could pitch well. So I think they're all super talented, and I don't think really you have much to be worried about when it comes to Harvey. I think he's going to turn it around and have a solid year for them.
Gotcha. I'm guessing that, you know, him going out with supermodels every night, maybe that could kind of take your velocity away from your fastball a little bit, but that's another discussion because this is a family show. So we have to dip over to the NHL. Rob, you oversee a sports show. You're well ingrained with a radio station, but now we're going to add something different to your portfolio. You're the new commissioner of the NHL. You've thrown Gary Bettman out the door. What drastic changes would you make to the game to increase its appeal, or does it need any changes at all?
You know, I guess as commissioner, part of the job is to get word out about the game and spread the word of the game so more people enjoy it. Personally, I think sometimes you can try too hard to make changes and you kind of ruin the game itself. I think there's a core group of people that love hockey, that appreciate it for what it is. Years back, they tried to have the puck glow on TV so people could follow it better in the hopes that more people would watch the game. That didn't really work. So I think when you start to think about how to make other people enjoy the game, there's a difference between doing that and then changing the fundamentals of the game itself to try to appeal to more people. I think the game itself is fine. I think maybe you just need to show it to more people to be able to appreciate it. But when it comes to making changes to the game itself, I'm kind of not for that because I think that kind of ruins the integrity of the game a little bit. I'm a little bit more of a traditionalist when it comes to that. I'd be very hesitant to be making changes to the game itself.
Hey, Rob, this is Lee. I feel like because you're a radio guy, I should use a radio voice, but this is the best one I have, unfortunately. So, but I'm stuck here in Tennessee, a state that has an NFL team. You can't see the air quotes, and then a basketball team. You know, New York is a city that loves its sports, lots of sports, professional sports. Do you think Jeff Hornacek is the answer for the Knicks, and how likely will his concept of blending the triangle with the up-tempo pace work, and will Phil Jackson let him do that?
Well, first of all, I remember Hornacek as a player, and he was the epitome of the type of player you would want to root for, a guy that didn't maybe have tremendous amount of skill, not that he wasn't skilled, but really a heart and soul, give it his all type of guy. And I think he's going to bring that same kind of attitude to the team when he coaches the Knicks. Now, I know Phil Jackson spent 6 to 12 hours, I think, speaking with him. And I think people, again, get caught up in this whole idea of running the triangle, and he's not a triangle guy, or is he a triangle guy? I think basketball is just there are different ways to play the game, and I'm confident if Phil Jackson spoke with him at length, and apparently they had never spoken before, and he made such a good impression on him that he was ready to hire him so quickly. I think it's less about running the triangle and more about just fundamentally how he's going to run the team. So I'm looking forward to seeing him coach the Knicks. Again, I was such a fan of his as a player. I think he's going to do a great job with the Knicks.
Well, I think it'd be good for the NBA if the Knicks had a really good team every year, definitely. As far as your radio career, though, who's been your favorite interview? And you may not be able to say their name, but who's been the one who has not met your expectations?
Well, I hosted a hockey show at WGBB called New York Hockey Talk a while back, and so I interviewed a lot of former hockey players, most of which played when I was maybe in my 20s and remembered playing. So one of the guys I enjoyed talking to was a former goaltender for the Rangers by the name of Eddie Mio, who does some radio work in Detroit now. He was actually the best man at Wayne Gretzky's wedding. So he was a lot of high energy and just a really down-to-earth guy, and I really enjoyed talking to him. Mike Gartner was a great interview, former Ranger and more so a Capitals prolific goal scorer for the Capitals for many years. He was very well spoken. He had some great stories to tell. We went through his whole career, so he was another one that I really enjoyed talking to. There really were a number of guys. I had a chance to speak to Al Arbor, which was really an honor to get to talk to him. So those are some of the ones that stand out for me. In terms of some of the more difficult ones, I had a former Ranger by the name of Jan Eriksson on the show. He actually called in from Sweden, and as a kid, he was one of my favorite players, one of those just hardworking, no-nonsense guys, not a lot of flash, not a lot of flair, but always did the job. He would shadow guys like Mario Lemieux, not a big goal scorer, but really just a solid hockey player. So I was excited to have him on the show, but I don't know if it was a language barrier or what, but it was a very difficult interview, a lot of one-word answers, and it takes some skill to try to get information out of people as an interviewer sometimes, but it was very difficult with him, and it was a little disappointing, again, because I was such a fan of his, and it was through no fault of his own. I think he was just not that type of guy to toot his own horn or to talk very much. So while it was a thrill to talk to him, the interview itself was probably not as entertaining as I had hoped when I had gotten him to come on the show.
Hey, Rob, this is Todd. Gee, the guy calls from Sweden and you diss him. I was going to go with my radio voice.
I'm still a big fan.
I was going to go with my radio voice, but unfortunately it's Ted Baxter and that's TV, so this is just me. Move on to the documentary. We know your dad, of course, was the primary inspiration for creating the documentary, but were there any other driving forces behind this?
Yeah, well, I work full-time for Canon USA, marketing their professional products, and being an employee of Canon, I have an opportunity to use some of the gear to get a better understanding of how the gear works and in turn hopefully help me be able to market those products better. So I started this reunion picnic at Wandsworth Park every year where my father, growing up, worked for the phone company. He had a softball team in the late 70s, early 80s. They played on Randall's Island. I remembered going to the games as a kid. And so about 2008, I thought it would be fun. I had my own softball team at the time called the Beavers. So I thought it would be fun to kind of have like an old-timers day game. So I got in touch with all his old teammates, some of which he's still friends with today. Got them to come down to the park. They live in different parts of Long Island and Florida and upstate New York. And it was a real success. Everyone came down and hadn't seen each other for a while. We played like an old-timers game. So it became an annual thing for a few years. And actually, we're still getting together every year now. But around the third year in, I thought it would be a great idea to do this documentary. I'd never done one before. I still haven't since, but it was just something I really wanted to do. So I must have rented nearly $20,000 worth of cameras and lenses from Canon, put it in a tent at Wandsworth Park, basically shot all the interviews. I had someone help shoot some of the footage from the game. Then I took about a year of putting this thing together, whether it be getting royalty-free music to play, getting images and other assets, and it was a real challenge. It took me about a year's worth of editing to put this whole documentary together. It really makes you appreciate some of the documentaries you see on TV, which they have teams of people doing all these things, which is why, other than the fact that it was my first documentary, it's not the cleanest put-together piece you'll ever see, but I was involved in every step of the process, so it got me to really understand how a documentary is made, the whole editing process and shooting video. So I learned quite a bit doing it. And again, I hadn't made it initially for my father and his friends or teammates. So the following year at the next reunion, I put this about 35-minute documentary together. I had a projector in the park, big screen, and all the guys watched it, and they were blown away. And again, I'd done it for my father and his friends, so of course they're going to appreciate it. But I found it interesting afterwards what people thought of it. 'Cause for me, I know all the people in the documentary. To have someone watch it who doesn't know anyone and get their feedback, I found it very interesting to see that some people, I wondered if people could sit through the whole thing, because it really, if you don't know them, I wasn't sure how much it would resonate. But I did get some feedback from people that have watched it, and they said they've enjoyed it. So that's been a nice feeling to know that they've been able to enjoy it. But it was a real lot of fun to put together, and of course my father and all his teammates and former coworkers really enjoyed it.
Hey, Rob, I watched it yesterday, and it's very enjoyable. Absolutely. I mean, it's just very cool, the connections that the guys still have, and discussing who was the fastest and who was the best defender, and talking about how this guy had a cannon at third, and it's like he would purposely wait until he was just a step from the bag and then throw him out. I mean, it's a great piece of work, really. It is.
I appreciate that. I treated it, as if they were like a real team, like not that they weren't a real team, but like a professional team. So I don't know how that, but as someone that doesn't know these people from the hole in the wall, you were able to sit through it and enjoy it. So it's fascinating.
Oh, no, it wasn't like, I got to sit through this. I was just, I thought, I want to watch this, and it's like, I'm really glad I watched it. I'll probably watch it again, seriously, within a week, because it's really, really good. Walk us through the process of just creating that.
Well, basically, the day of the barbecue, I basically sat everyone down. I had a series of questions, 20 or so questions that I asked everyone at the barbecue. So after I did that, now we took B-roll footage, like people walking around in the park, old videos or old pictures or video from the game. So that was all the B footage. But all the A footage, which was basically all of the interviews, I basically transcribed each interview into words on an Excel sheet and had a tab, let's say, for each player and all their answers. And then you kind of start to fit it together like a puzzle piece. So I'm trying to tell a story, and I broke it up into chapters, and I kind of separated comments where they kind of were similar in what I wanted to talk about. And then I ended up with this set that I wanted to string together. Then it was a challenge just finding those video clips and cutting them all together. Then you just basically have your whole story. And then as you do that, you start to interject relevant pieces of B footage, whether it be photographs or footage from the game or someone in the park and so forth. And then there's a gentleman by the name of Greg Boyes that does some of the audio work at Sports Talk 1240 for me. He was nice enough to lend his services, and I'd give him scripts to read for me, so I'd have another audio clip to run as a narrator through it. So there were a series of things that I had to do. It was the first time I had ever done it, so I'm sure someone who's a documentary maker has a much better system, but so it probably took me longer than it would if I'd done this for a living, let's say. But it was certainly an interesting process, and I learned a lot doing it. And working for Canon USA, I've gone to many trade shows where I've talked to filmmakers, because working at Canon, some of the products that I market are professional video cameras. So very often we work with other documentary filmmakers and so forth. So I've had a chance to talk to a lot of professionals through my job at Canon to kind of take tips away for myself in trying to put this together. So the whole thing was really just a learning experience. I had a lot of fun doing it. And if I had time, I would do it again. If I were retired, I could see myself just doing that, just going out, coming up with an idea for a documentary, doing film and putting it all together and trying to improve upon the last one. But it was a lot of fun.
And I will say personally, I do have a lovely Canon PowerShot. Very happy with it.
There we go.
Is there going to be a sequel, or do you have something in mind to do another documentary if you get time?
There are a couple of ideas I do have. I don't know that there'll be a sequel. I don't know what sequel I could do to this one. But I would like to do another documentary in the future. I have some ideas. I've reached out even to some people, but really the problem for me now is just time. Between my full-time job, doing the Sports Talk 1240, consulting for WGBB, my plate is full enough right now. So if at some point I find some time to do it, like I said, I would love to get back and do another one. And I do have some ideas, but basically right now it's just a matter of finding the time, because it's not the kind of thing you can kind of do halfway. And that's kind of the way I am with everything. Once I decide to go and do something, I'm full steam ahead. And until I'm ready to devote that time and energy, it kind of just sits on the back burner.
Hey, Rob, I want to focus on Sports Talk 1240. Give us an understanding of how long has it been on air, and explain your practice of the rotating guest hosts. Did you come up with this concept to keep the on-air talent fresh and yet unpredictable?
WGBB is a unique station in that they lease airtime to hosts. So meaning most radio stations hire talent, they sell ad time to pay the bills and so forth. GBB is different in that they have a contract with the Chinese radio network that they air Monday through Friday, and that basically is most of where their revenue comes from. On the weekends is where they lease airtime. So they charge hosts for airtime, and those hosts of the shows then go out and get sponsors for their show to help pay for the airtime. So I had done this back for actually the first show I ever hosted was called the Beavers Backstop Radio Show. And it was a friend of mine who was on the Beavers softball team that I played on, and we were just messing around half an hour every week talking about our softball team. It was really just fun. But at the time, I thought this was kind of interesting. So then I went and bought airtime to host Sports Talk 1240 in January 2007 is when it first aired. Boomer Esiason was our first guest. And through the 7 weeks of that show, I'd gotten Mike Bossy and some other guys, and I said, wow, this is amazing. I'm able to get these guests. This is before Twitter and Facebook were really ways to reach out to people. So I kind of got hooked on it, but it was kind of costly to pay for the airtime. So what I did was WGBB at the time did not have a website. I have some background in web design. I got to know the station manager. So basically I started to consult for the station. Doing things like helping them sell airtime, developing the website for the very first time, keeping it up to date and maintaining it. Part of what my payment was discounted airtime in exchange for that. So what I had done with that discounted airtime is I started hosting New York Hockey Talk every week. But I found it became, again, very difficult to do the type of show that I wanted to do, where there's a lot of research involved when you have guests on asking them questions, and it started to become a lot. So what I decided to do was start this. At the time, it was called Sports Radio New York, which was a network of shows that we would rotate each week. There were people with different sports talk shows in the area. I'd let them come on and do their show. I would podcast it and put it on the Sports Radio New York website, and then charge them a discounted rate than what GBB would charge, and they would only have to host maybe, say, once a month, so it'd be a little bit more affordable. So we started doing this for about 2 years, but I found all the different shows became a little confusing, so I just decided to go with one show called Sports Talk 1240. Same concept where we're alternating show hosts, but at least it's one show name. So when we go to promote it and so forth, it's a little less all over the place. We just have one single show. So we've been doing that since about 2010, and it's been really successful. We've had a lot of hosts that are just younger guys coming out of school looking to break into business and make a name for themselves. We have some older guys that just enjoy getting on the radio and talking sports that only need to do it once a month. Some of my hosts come on 2-3 times a month, depending on month to month. So it's a kind of thing where it isn't overly burdensome for the hosts who generally have other jobs. It isn't overly expensive because they're not hosting every week. And then I offer all the extras in terms of helping podcast the show and promoting it on all of our social media and so forth. So it's kind of been a win-win for everyone involved. And I really enjoy doing it. Sometimes I still get on and host from time to time. Generally nowadays I spend more of the time behind the scenes recording shows, promoting it, updating the website, things of that nature, helping some of the guests, some of the hosts book guests when I can. And we've been credentialed for Mets and Islander games, so we've had an opportunity to go and sit in the press box for some games and report on games. So it's really just been a lot of fun. And like I said, everyone that's been involved with it has enjoyed it. And it's been fairly successful. Like I said, we've been doing it since 2007, full-time since maybe 2008 or 9. And it's been on Sunday nights from 8 to 10 now. You can catch it on, of course, WGBB 1240 AM on Long Island. I also do some work for the radio station that we're soon actually going to be upgrading the streaming server and the website for WGBB, so you'll be able to catch it there as well. We have a webcam in the studio, so there's a lot of little extra things that we have that your typical podcast might not be able to offer. So, again, it's been a lot of fun, and we hope to continue doing it for years to come.
That's great. That's great. I think I have 2 shameless plugs that I'm going to throw in there. Since you do rotating guests. I think there's going to be one time, I don't know when, maybe before the summer, that Baseball, Beer, and Barbecue decides to just magically make an appearance on a Sunday night. We won't be talking New York sports, but we're going to talk, everything all over the place. So I guess our people will talk to your people about this.
Okay, we'll see what we can do there. We can see what we can do.
Yeah, and the second shameless plug I want to mention, my show, Late Night Parents, is going to debut today on 1240 WGBB, and I want to tell you about the overall hospitality that I've received from you and from Jeff Lowe. Second to none. Want to thank you guys for the support and willing to work with me and, through scheduling and days and everything else like that. So another shameless plug for the management team at 1240 WGBB.
Yeah, we do what we can. We want to see shows that join on. We want to see them be successful. So we want to do whatever we can to help promote the show and help you guys get sponsors to stay on the air. So that's, like I said, we don't just want shows coming in, paying, and leaving. The ideal situation is where we help shows be successful and get sponsors to be able to stay on the air with us. Gotcha.
Well, Rob, we're about to close this out. Where do our listeners find you? Where can they listen to you? If people are interested about the movie, the documentary, tell us best ways to find you out there in the interweb.
Well, the documentary, you can go to beaversoftballdoc.com or beaverballdoc on Twitter. I don't really tweet from that account, but beaversoftballdoc.com, you can check out the documentary. sportstalk1240.com. Everything there you need, all of our social media accounts, all of our past shows and articles, host bios and so forth, upcoming shows, past shows, everything about Sports Talk 1240. You can visit sportstalk1240.com for all that. I'm on Twitter, Rob Kowal, WGBB, and that's really it. Those are the two sites, sportstalk1240.com and beaversoftballdoc.com.
Rob, thanks so much.
Thanks, Ted. I look forward to meeting you. We've exchanged a lot of texts, and this is actually the first time I think we've actually spoken, but I'll have to meet you soon down at the studio one of these Saturdays.
You got it. Talk to you
Ted,
soon.
Thanks, guys.
We've